Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we look to get under the skin of all things performance management and motivation to understand what makes our wonderful world of recruitment tick. Today, I'm sitting down with David Morel, the founder of Tiger Recruitment, a business that he has now been running for over 20 years and so has tons of learnings and experience that he gets to share with us today. On the side, he's also a writer for Forbes, which is always a very, very interesting thing to be able to pull out of a podcast guest. And very recently moved over to Dubai as he sees a lot of opportunity there for his existing business to continue growing successfully. We go into all kinds of topics today, starting out with general management and leadership lessons that he's taken over the last decade or so, through to things like AI, that ever-present topic that we can't seem to get away from, and various other bits and bobs. He's got tons of experiences mentioned, loads of lessons that he's ready to share. So let's get into it. David from Tiger Recruitment. David, good morning. I say good morning. What time is it in Dubai right now?
So it's just after lunch, 1:36 to be precise.
Well, good afternoon to you then in that case then. Before we get into things, I think it'd be really great first to give people a quick intro to yourself and a little bit about Tiger as well. Do you want to give us the 60-second elevator pitch about you guys and yourself?
Yeah. So I've been in recruitment for, it's probably about over 20 years. Set up Tiger back in 2001, focusing on the secretarial admin market in London, right at the high quality end. And then over time, we've opened up different divisions, we've expanded, we pivoted into different sort of verticals within what I now call the sort of business support sector, and have gone global. So we have two offices in London. We're also based in Dubai, New York, and Zurich. So still focused very much on that quality side of recruitment. And one of the challenges we faced over time has been how to retain that boutique quality product as we've expanded the business.
Well, I think many people listening to the podcast would love to know that, because especially when you're a smaller firm, you do have that more high-touch service. It feels like with the founder being involved a lot of the time, it feels great as well. And maintaining that more boutique approach, I think, is a hard one as you scale 100%. So I'd love to dig into that in a minute as well. I've got to ask one big question. Where did the name Tiger come from? Please don't tell me you saw a tiger and decided, yeah, that's the name of the company. Like, where did it come from?
So the honest answer to that is, and one of the things I guess where when I put Tiger together was really focused on the brand and taking a slightly different route to it in terms of not just getting not just naming the company after myself, putting bums on seat, having everyone cold calling, etc., which is what it was like 25 years ago. What I wanted to do was invest a load of money in marketing in a brand that people would remember and would become synonymous with high quality recruitment. And so what I wanted is come up with a name that would actually stick out and to people would remember. I had a few different names. The short list was Blue Spider or Tiger, and in the end, I felt Blue Spider was too creative. And the other thing, every time I asked someone, right, Blue Spider, Tiger, I'd ask them a week later, what were the two names we discussed, and everyone would remember Tiger. So that was the reason for calling it Tiger.
I can't really place on why it holds, but I agree with it as well. Like, I remember when I first came across you, like Tiger has always stuck in my name as like one to remember. And I don't know if it's because a lot of other recruitment company names are a bit more abstract, whereas just going direct for an animal. It's like how you think about a company like Apple. They choose a fruit, and if you'd heard someone say, "Oh yeah, I'm calling my company banana," you'd be like, "What?" But it sticks because it's such like an obvious and direct thing as well. So it's a good name, and that's why I was really curious. You also mentioned before we came live that you've recently moved out to Dubai. I'd love to know why you've done that outside of the wonderful weather, because it is a little bit miserable in the UK at the best of times.
So look, we've been working. I think the first place we ever made in Dubai was back in 2006, and then we've had an office here for probably almost 10 years. Maybe it is 10 years now. So it's not a new thing for us. That said, for me to move out here is the principal reason is the opportunities, and the market is just done not a massive gear change, but it's done another gear change, and it's a significant enough gear change for me and for the business to identify, the benefit of me being out here and really leveraging, the contacts I have. And I think that's another thing is it's in terms of the people that are out in Dubai now, you do have a lot of the CEOs and a lot of the senior directors, senior partners within all the companies we recruit for. So there is almost more of a need for someone who's been with the business for as long as I have. to be out here and meeting people on the ground.
Interesting. And I don't mind me asking, you've got family, right? Have you taken family with you, or?
So family, we've got the kids into the school, so that's all sorted. And my other half moves out with the kids in July. So I'm the advance guard, if you like.
Oh, fantastic. 4 months of peace and all the chaos begins when they get over there and want to start doing all the fun things to do, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. And you mentioned that this could be secret sauce, in which case you haven't got to reveal it as such, but you said it felt like there was something here now where the market's come on, something has advanced and progressed. Is it more like you say that other decision makers have moved out there and you feel I now need to be out there because that's where they are? Or are there other things that you've observed?
Well, I think it's more. It is really the decision makers. I think it's also, what businesses have had is they've had branch offices over here, and with the look, I think you've got to bring Saudi into this as well. I think with and we've all seen sort of the big push and the investment going in to Saudi, and we know where that's going to be or where they'd like that to be, in 5-10 years time. So I think what you've seen is these branch offices, small branch offices, have turned into not headquarters as such. Certainly, you say they're MENA headquarters, but into much more substantial size businesses and offices. So for a business like ours, who is totally industry agnostic, so works across every industry you can think of, then the opportunity, if these offices are bigger, then there's more opportunity for us to be placing staff into them. So that's the driver. But I would say the Saudi, the investment's gone to Dubai. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of stuff at the moment happening in Abu Dhabi as well. And I think Dubai is the perfect place to look after all these different regions, if you like.
Yeah, the way you speak about it reminds me of how people were speaking about the US 10 years ago or so, and we had this massive gold rush out to America. And I remember one of our clients at the time was saying to me, yeah, out there, recruiters don't typically think about spending 3 hours a day on the phone. It's just not really in their working pattern. Whereas you send a UK recruiter out there or bring that UK style over there, and suddenly you can be really successful out there. And we had companies who were, going from being a very UK centric business to being like, there is just so much opportunity in the US. We're going to go out there. We're going to hammer it hard. In a way, you've sort of done the same here, obviously in 2025, 10 years on, but instead going towards Dubai and, like you say, MENA in general. That's where you see in the potential future being for some recruitment then, or as a new market to expand?
I do definitely. I think there's futures. There are other places around the world which are interesting, but this and the US still has, there is a big draw there. I still think there's just with the sheer size of the US, there's always going to be opportunities. And I totally agree with you as well. The English style of recruitment seems to be very, very well received over there. I think the thing is when people are looking at moving at opening a business or opening an office internationally, think about the sort of the candidates, or not just the candidates, the clients that you're picking up in these places. And so, if there aren't many of your competitors operating in a particular sector, and therefore you might be able to break into a PSL or into a client, let's say a big US investment bank, and that you can't get into in London. You might be able to get into them in Dubai, and then you might you'd be able to use Dubai to refer you back into London. So there's quite a lot of there's some real good gains to have around these international offices, which you might not necessarily think about. I think I think it's people want to see that you have got a global sort of input, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if you are a global footprint, and if you've got that, again, there's lots of things happening and covering things off, et cetera, et cetera.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing how it goes. And I'm sure I'll be following along on LinkedIn, anywhere else that you might post about it. Speaking of, I know that you've also been doing some writing for Forbes over the last few years, right?
Yeah. So I've been doing that. I was asked to step in and to contribute to their website probably about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, and that's been a really interesting forum to get some thoughts across, particularly things that are happening in the US, things that are happening in the UK, but we do try and sort of centralise it around what we're seeing in the US, but really talking about some of the challenges that we face, particularly in this post-pandemic world. The hybrid working is something that I know has been talked about to the nth degree now, but things like that, and obviously businesses need to be aware of changes, what's going on in their employees' minds, what's important, around benefits and working patterns, flexibility, and what have you.
I'd love to dig into some of that as well. You've been writing about it, and clearly you've got a lot of thoughts on it, which is always good news. I'll jump into one thing you said there, because I think it's a very interesting topic at the moment. US, current state of it, its influence on the world. I remember speaking to a few clients about 6 months ago that were like, oh, obviously it's not all good Trump coming in. Some of the girls, for example, that worked in their businesses really upset at the time over in the US, very understandably. But many of them said, but business has absolutely boomed since he's taken over. And then in the last 6 weeks, obviously it's been absolute chaos in the stock markets, it feels like. What's been your perception of the impact of Trump's takeover on the world, for example, and what's going on right now? Do you feel it's been a positive thing for business? Have you seen any impact as a result of it?
So I'm of the belief, and I have been for some time, that politics is less influential to business decisions or to the way that CEOs run their businesses than ever before. One of the biggest reasons for that is just that, I think CEOs and business leaders have just got fed up with politicians and the decisions they make and the reasons they make them. And a lot of the time just don't agree with them. And I think the appetite that has changed, not changed, but I think the CEOs you really see now, that CEOs need to be entrepreneurial. They need to be driven. They need to be forward thinking. They need to be positive, glass half full people that spot the opportunities. So when you look at things that, when you look at using Trump as an example, the impact of that 10, 15 years ago, I would argue would have been pretty seismic. And all kinds of things would have happened to stock markets, et cetera, et cetera. Now, people look at this and just go, they almost expect it. So what's going on? So what that means for businesses is businesses are just, they know that, something's going to come up, something else is going to come up, something else is going to come up. But you can't control that. You can't plan for it. So you just crack on, and if you want to grow your business, you can't be sitting there looking at what's happening, on the political landscape. And the same goes with the UK as well. You've just got to get on with it. So in terms of what I think about Trump, the US, what's happening out there at the minute, I just see opportunity. I see one of the things that's interesting about the US is where those opportunities are now. So in the past, they may have been, it might have been very New York centric. It meant New York, San Fran. But now, there's an exodus out of San Fran. There's an exodus, not a complete exodus out of New York, but certainly there's a lot of, if you're looking at the finance world, a lot of people who've ended up in Miami. So I think the interesting thing about the US is not whether it's a good market to operate in or not, that the number of opportunities has changed. It's where are those opportunities now versus 10 years ago. And also, just there is always going to be opportunity out there. You just need to be forward thinking, positive, glass half full, don't worry about the politicians and go for it.
You sound a lot like my business, the chairman of my business, who said exactly the same, essentially. It's like, politics will keep on going. The world will keep on turning. There's always business to do. And those who are really up to it will be the ones who spot the opportunities, you say. So I'm completely spot on with that one. Just curious kind of what your perception is on what's happened, but it's all well and good. Let's take a look then at the sort of management and leadership side, because you've been at this for, like you say, 24 years now in this business. You were an associate director before as well. You've got a lot of experience behind you when it comes around to this side of things. If you could summarize your general approach to leadership of a business, how would you describe it? And I'm very aware that's a very broad conversation topic. That's why I want to start there, and then we'll dig into things as we go along.
Look, it is simple. The number one piece is lead by example. And I when I was working for other people, I had to respect that individual. And if someone would tell me what to do or suggest what to do, or et cetera, but then would do something completely different, or if someone was advising me on something, but clearly they weren't very good at their job, or if someone was sort of, it wasn't setting a good example coming in late into the office, et cetera, or just taking the mickey. I just had no respect for that individual. And I think, and I've seen that over the years, people who work, for Tiger, that, what that leadership team, and having a very good leadership team, but that a leadership team that leads by example is so important. And that's one of the reasons at Tiger, which pretty controversially, because I'm sure there'll be lots of private equity companies who turn around to me and say that we've got to change the structure. But every single one of us still recruits. Myself, MD, all the heads of the offices, we're still there recruiting, because there are other reasons as well. But by us showing people, the lower down consultants, new consultants coming in, normal consultants, senior consultants, that actually, look, this is how we're doing it, this is how we're working, we're giving you this advice because we're doing this ourselves. That is very, very impactful. So I think that for me is the number one thing about leadership, is you have to lead by example. Number two, you are going to make mistakes. Okay, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes, and you've made a mistake, and then you can't kind of work out the solution to get around that mistake. You have to accept, whatever level you are, whether you're a CEO who's been in the business for 24 years, or whether you're setting up your own recruitment company, whatever you might be doing, you are going to make mistakes along the way, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you can't get downhearted or downbeat about it. What you do need to do about it is understand what's happened, how you can correct that and rectify that mistake, and sort of how you can prevent it from making that mistake again. And one of the hardest things really, about growing recruitment companies, in my opinion, is how it's all about people. It's all about getting the people in the right places. It's like a massive jigsaw puzzle, and it's difficult. And I think one of the hardest things is there are some very, very good consultants out there who've made a lot of money and might have made a lot of money for you, and they want to go into management, but they are not necessarily the best person to be a manager. So it's about being. This leads me to the next one, I guess. It's about being very honest and being direct with people, and people respect that. And it may be conversations that you don't want to have with individuals, but you need to have the gravitas and I guess that sort of level of directness to be able to turn around to someone senior and say, look, I don't think this is your best route. We want you to stay with the business. We want you to focus in this area instead, perhaps on your billings, or helping in other areas, get your to give your advice and show some of the skills you've got, and reward them in other ways. So I think those are the big points. But I think that final thing is really, really important as well, because if you get it wrong, and I've got it wrong on a couple of occasions, and one occasion I had someone who worked with the business for 4 years. I lost some fantastic people because of the position this individual was in, and I didn't cut it quick enough by any stretch of the imagination. And I would say we lost 2 years of growth within the business, and that's the honest truth of it. And I've always been very careful not to make the same mistake twice. I wrote an article actually the other day, and it was basically saying, make decisions quickly. I think the title of the article was something like "Fail Fast." So make decisions, and hiring decisions, management decisions, and whatever you need to do to grow your business. Make decisions, but if they're not right, don't be afraid to step back and say, no, it's not working. Don't wait another 6 months, 12 months. Give yourself 3 months when you make the decision and move on.
I can think of many times over the last 10 years of running this business that I've held on to something for too long, just kind of praying that it will work out. So I've put a lot of faith in this person or this project. Let's see it through. Let's see what happens. And you end up really paying the price later when you don't make that decision sooner. So I completely jump all over that. I was curious when you said about the whole you will make mistakes piece. Being vulnerable for a moment, can you think of a mistake? You half referenced one then a second ago, a mistake that you've made and what you learned from it. I'm curious to hear one.
God, you're putting me on the spot now.
I am indeed.
I've made so many.
God, I've made so few, and it's been so long, I can't remember.
It's difficult. It's not now. I've made them the whole time. Look, I think that management one is the one obviously that springs to mind. But I just think sometimes it's more about how I want to. If there's a message I want to deliver, sometimes I deliver that message the wrong way, and then I immediately afterwards regret the way that I delivered that message and think that I could have improved the delivery of that and I would have had a better outcome from doing that. And that sort of, we're all humans. We all have different personalities. We have things that are, we're good at. We have things that we struggle with, and that communication piece is something, and I know my fellow directors, in fact, probably most of my colleagues will all say exactly say the same thing about me, is that, I think very fast and very decisive, but, sometimes my mouth doesn't articulate what my brain's thinking. So I have to work constantly on my communication. And that's just something I'm not a natural at. So that's where I make a lot of mistakes. But the good thing is, within the business, is I probably give myself a harder time than my colleagues do, because they know they know how I work. They're used to me speaking, so they know what message I'm trying to convey.
Got it. And how have you seen yourself grow in that area over the years? Like, make mistakes, and of course, it's one thing making that mistake and then improving from it. Have you been very deliberate about that, or is it more of a make the mistake, but make that one again, and then making sure it's in the bank of things that you've learned from over time? I'm just curious how you've improved that side of yourself.
I think you've just got to. I do think you just need to change your approach. I think you need to look at, what caused me to make those decisions, and maybe I need to look at the information that more carefully, and actually I probably need to look at other information or other other bits and pieces, or I need to look at the way I manage individuals. One of the things I'm very big on is that everyone is an individual. So as a manager, you cannot manage everyone in the same way. You have to find the way to manage that person, and that person only. Everyone is different. So I think actually spending the time going forward to invest the time in meetings and management meetings to really understand someone will, particularly on that management piece, will give you a greater understanding. But I think just in general things, in general areas where one might make mistakes, is really just scrutinizing the data. It's not the case of just say, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. You've got to look far more deeply than that. And sometimes you might even come to the conclusion, you say, do you know what? I actually need to externalize this, because if you sit there and think, and you're going round and round in circles, I'm quite good at getting perspective on myself. But sometimes I'll have to go and say, there are people I have access to. Trainers, I've got a very good one in Dubai, actually, who I know I can just call up the phone and say, right, this is what's happened, this is what I've done, what's your advice? And it could, you could have done anything like that, and you've handled the way that you should have handled it, etc., etc. But it could be, right, focus a bit more on that, or focus a bit more on that, and so on and so on. So, don't be afraid to go and get, to have a mentor. I think, having a mentor, having someone, I know it's a bit of it is a cliche, the CEO is a lonely place, etc., or lonely rock. It is at times. It's a fantastic job, but don't be afraid to therefore go and get some external advice if you need to do so.
In a way, kind of like how we view therapy in the UK different to how you would in the US. Like, in the US, it's a very common thing to have a therapist. Over in the UK, it feels a little bit taboo in a way. I feel it starts to get the same with like mentors. Like, people assume, oh, you need a mentor, you need a coach, you need whatever when you're progressing through your career and you're figuring things out. But like yourself, like I've got coaches too, right? And it's probably the one thing I'd stress the most that many seem to get pushed to one side, is that having mentors that you can go to, like you say, and speak to when you're in that lonely place as a CEO or a business founder, or even sometimes there's a director that's trying to grow their way through the ranks, but doesn't really feel they can necessarily go to the leader of their business and say, oh, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. I'm not sure how to do this. Having those mentors, I think, is so valuable to do. And it's good to hear that even someone with so much experience like yourself still has those mentors and coaches around you is a really good thing, I think.
It's one of these things as well that, it's not just it's also as a CEO, it's not just for you. Having that in place and having a system in place which your team can go and reach out to someone. Then we've done a lot of market research on this, and it's something in the future we're looking to do. It is an expensive resource, but we see the benefits of it, and there are some fantastic programs out there where you can have your, let's say, top 10 people within the business all have access to someone who they can change from time to time if they don't feel that person suitable, where they can reach out to at any particular time. And I think that's a really, really interesting thing to do. If money was no object, we would press a button on that now, but it's definitely something we will press a button on in the future.
Awesome. Nice. And one thing you said in that, naturally, we're a reporting gamification company, right? So I'm going to latch onto this part for a second. You said being able to go deep and understand the data is quite a key part as well. What does that look like at your company? Because we've gone through the era now where every business has said, oh, we want to be a data-driven company. Like, data is really important. Everyone knows that at this point. What does data look like to you guys? How are you running your business week to week through numbers?
So I created something probably about, 5-6 years ago, which is a dashboard of stats. And these are all the figures that help me that I need to see the health of the business and run the business on a weekly basis. And I can quickly spot, where anomalies or where things are not where I want them to be. To give you an example of what some of those data points are, and they range from everything. It could range from the number of applications we have, and I have the previous 4 or 5 figures, and sometimes I have the best results we've ever achieved in there. It's things. So I've got benchmarks when I look at these spreadsheets, and this is every Monday. Some of it could be about how many applications we've had on the website, where are our rankings, whether it's on every office in Google, where are we on Glassdoor, where are we on on Clutch, which is used in the US. So on all of these social sites, where are our rankings right now? And I have a sort of, what are the changes? How have they changed over the course of the last week? We will look at the number of new pieces of business that have come through. Where have those bits of business come through from? I'm looking to see, that gives us a very good state of the market. Job numbers, that is probably the most simple thing of all, because you can just get that from looking at your website every Monday. But just actually seeing that will give you a sense of what the health of the market. And over time, you can see very quickly what the health of the market is in certain places. And I think that's very, very useful. Where are candidates coming from? Where are the good? Who are we placing? Where the candidates we're placing? Where are they coming from? One thing we didn't touch upon actually on the management piece, which I probably should have done because it's something I'm fixated with, is return on investment. And that's not return on investment on money; it's more than anything else. Well, it's a combination of return on investment on money and return on investment on time. But it's really trying to make sure we're using these dashboards we're using that to inform the decisions we then make. Could be about an advertiser. It came up when I last saw you, Derry. We were talking about LinkedIn, and the cost of LinkedIn these days, and how do we get around that, et cetera, and how do we use that to the best of our advantage? And I think so those and I remember we were talking at different times, and I've talked with individuals around, well, actually, consultants should pay for their LinkedIn. I had a conversation with that internally the other day. So all of these things are really, really interesting bits and pieces, which are driven by dashboard information, and that's why we use we could get many stats as we possibly can. But I think the key thing with stats, you've got to do them regularly, and you've got to do them. And you need to do them at the same time. You've got to get into it. You have to have a very systematic approach. So you are comparing like for like. And some things you can have every week. There are some stats we look at every day. And there are other things, and even things like sort of how's your website? TTFB, time to first bite. What's that looking like? Using GT metrics. What are the percentages at any particular time? So it's making sure that everything is working, creating a dashboard of your key facts, and then making sure that everything is working at its optimal level and the most efficient.
The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear all that is, my God, that is a lot of data. So when you're thinking about what the most important things are that you're having regular conversations about as a leadership team, I imagine you'll say at different points, we'll talk about them all. But what are the top, say, 3 to 5 that you focus on, like every single day, that you've always got your finger on the pulse of?
Job numbers on the website. That's my number. I wake up and that's the first thing I look at. How many jobs have we got advertised on the website? And obviously we're very careful about making sure all our jobs are live, and we've got systems in place to manage that. So I know that is a true reflection of what's actually happening in the market. And then I'll look a little bit deeper in terms of, right, what are the new jobs come through, where they're coming from. So jobs on the website is number one. Number two, we have our KPIs within the business, but we're not fixated with looking at too many KPIs. But things I do want to, number two, I would put just in terms of consultant activity. So I'm looking at, what are the conversations we're having, what are the meetings we're having, and what are the interview numbers like over the course of a week. That's important for me to make sure that people are doing the minimum of what they need to be doing, and I know where those need to be to lead on to the next thing. Look, number three, social rankings is so important these days. I mean, if a new client or a candidate wants to register with you, they look at this stuff. If a client is looking to place a bit of business with you, and they look at 3 agencies on Google, the first 5 that come up, they're going to want to go. They want to see good reviews, and they want to see you over a certain thing. And there are a lot of there are a lot of agencies who perform very, very badly on social rankings. So it's an easy win to focus on that. The best focus on that is by doing a damn good job. So those are three things I'll give you straight off.
Out of curiosity, because we're going to talk about AI in a minute as well. It's always an ever-present topic. The one thing I've heard from a number of people is they're concerned things like social rankings are going to be heavily influenced by the advent of AI, because these days you search for something and Google gives you an AI summary at the top. You ask ChatGPT a question, and obviously it's all AI summarized based on what it can go and find. So social rankings are still important, but it feels like they may be going down in importance. Have you guys done anything to think about how you look in an AI world? Because I've seen some companies basically writing content to try and make sure they appear as the number one reference source when asked a given question by AI.
Look, I think, Derry, it's a really good question, and that's probably an area we can improve upon. I mean, there's the social side. I mean, I still, I might be completely wrong on this, and it's just one of these things I've always had a thought of. That, when you look at SEO, obviously we know how important SEO rankings are. Is there a correlation between your rankings on social sites and those rankings? Are Google algorithms looking at that stuff? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anyone really knows the answer to that. So for me, that is still important. But I think what you just spoke about there is something that is a very, very good point. And I think as we move more and more down that AI path, people need to be thinking about that. I'll make a note on that after this call.
Let me know what you come up with as well. I'm really keen to hear.
Yeah.
So you spoke about all this data. Does that trickle all the way down to the consultants themselves? Like, are you giving them a lot of accountability by giving access to those kinds of numbers? What does that look like in the business?
So all the data, all these dashboards and the data, the management team, the core management team has access to that data. One of the things we do as a business is we do an update on a Monday to the whole business, which is a sit rep of where we are. And in my sort of CEO's piece, I will draw upon that data and the particular data points I want to highlight in that. So that's the way we get it across to the rest of the business. And I think that it helps the rest of the business. It gives context to the decisions we're making and so on. Again, perhaps touching back upon that management piece earlier, I hate prevarication. I think the job of a CEO is to make quick decisions. An excellent CEO makes quick decisions and is right 98% of the time. Now, you're probably not going to achieve that, but it's a nice thing to aim towards. So I think anything that gives you and allows you to make quick decisions, but if you're making quick decisions, you need to give the team needs to get the context from somewhere. So I think by doing that, getting the dashboard, making quick decisions, giving context, then that tends to work quite well, certainly within our business.
Got it. And then how are you going about setting expectations with individuals as well? Because the one thing I jumped to there and obviously kind of raises a small little amber flag in my head is if the guys aren't aware of what they've done at a given time, how can they know what it is they still need to do in that week? Is there an expectation set with their line manager on what should be done and they track that between them? How does that happen?
Yeah, so there's every consultant within our company will have a one-to-one meeting with their manager every week, and we have on this broadest level, we do career appraisals, big career appraisals at Christmas. We do mid-year appraisals halfway through the year. We have the weekly meetings going on. We have company KPIs, which, as I say, are not exhaustive. We're not as far in a sort of scheme of how recruitment companies work. We are only sort of focus on a few data points or a few sort of targets, let's say, in that area. And obviously, you have your sales targets as well, which the teams and each individual and each team knows they have to hit. So yeah, we try and keep the communication to a minimum, or to that, to keep people their minds as focused and as sharp as possible. And I think that works really, really well. I feel that I feel that people know what they need to do, and if things are changing in the market, what they can do and how they can react quickly. Because as we know in recruitment, markets do change just like that, and sometimes you've got to.
As we've all seen for the last 2 years, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. And that kind of leads quite nicely into the next question as well. You've probably seen a lot of this over the last 24 years, what it is that drives people, what it is that motivates them. How are you motivating a global team of 50 or 50 plus at this point?
Well, I think the most important thing really is people want to be happy. People want to get into a place of work which they actually enjoy getting in. They want to, walk into the office on a Monday morning, with, just looking forward to seeing their colleagues, looking forward to working within a professional organisation. I think people like, that we have a sort of what we call a tiger type, a tiger fit that fits within our business, and that sort of, and we have 5 sort of, I guess, sort of keywords, which are very much part of what we do: excellence, positivity, integrity, dedication, and gravitas. Everyone who we employ fits one of those ideals. So when someone comes in, if we had a lunch party at Christmas party last year, and the internationals didn't come over, but everyone in the UK was there, the different divisions we have and so on. So there's a good sort of 40, 45 people there. And all you saw was everyone just moving around. No one left on their own. No one everyone, would be very happy sitting next to anyone else within the business. And I think that is it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but that happiness, that sort of, we're in this together. We want to support you. You've got our backs, etc., from their colleagues. It's so important. I think the other thing is people want consistency. People don't want nasty surprises. Like, they don't want, and this has got to come down from the top. They want whether it's from CEO downwards, but their managers is equally important. They want to know what's happening, what the context is, why we're doing the things we're doing, what the plan is, what the strategy plan is. So as a CEO, it's about being really open. It's not being a closed book and sort of saying, okay, well, I think we should go in that direction, but I'm kind of not going to tell anyone because I might put a nose out of joint. You've got to deal with things full on, head on, and that's what your staff want to see.
And it all boils up to one keyword that I think we've all heard a million times over, which is culture, by the sounds of it, right?
Totally.
The one thing I've often heard is that once your company gets to a certain size, you no longer really have the biggest influence on that culture. It's its own thing, its own living and breathing mechanism in the business. And while you can nudge it in the right direction, you really struggle to control it. How do you think you've influenced that culture over time, from the very early days of the business to where it is today? Are there any kind of strong positions that you hold on culture?
Well, the importance of culture we just discussed, but I think in terms of to maintain that, it's all about having the right people in those management positions, and particularly as you start going global and international. If that's a route that you do as a recruitment business owner, you need to find someone who exudes that culture that you want, and actually, that first person is culture management experience, but also someone who's a real, iconic fit, like is a tiger type within our business. That is more important than their billing prowess. They might be 75% of where you would want them to be, or 66% on their billing potential as a consultant. But if they can set that culture and then they can manage the people to perform, then that's what you need. And if you walk into any of our offices globally, it all looks the same. So you've got, we have certain posters, certain things up on the walls, things set out. Natural light is very important to us. Being in good locations, professional locations. So, and I think that having that commonality, so if one does think about going abroad or opening different offices, you've got to have a definitive culture, and that sort of how things look is really, really important.
I love that. That's really cool stuff. Nice. Touch on AI. I'll jump onto it now because you mentioned it as well before we went live as a key topic that you'd love to get into a little bit as well. The one big question I've got to frame it was just one that I had coming in that I was really curious to ask you. Do you think, with us leaning towards using AI tools more and more, especially to engage candidates? I seen one yesterday that was like, it will call you, it will have a chat about your skills, it will tell you about a role that it's got basically no recruiter involvement needed. It does the whole thing for you. Do you worry, or have you seen AI tools having an impact on the engagement rate with candidates, where they just don't simply want to engage with a robot, they want to speak to an actual human being?
100%. I think that's why if AI was, if people were happy with that solution, or that's the way things are going to go, then recruiters would have to be seriously worried about what things look like for us in 10 years' time. That personal touch, that personal element of speaking with a human is so important for candidates. Job search is a personal thing. Everyone has a different way. The business we're in business support, so much of it's personality driven. And that's not just my clients sort of saying, yeah, okay, we want this type of person, half glass full, driven, et cetera, et cetera. We want, they want people who are, there's a certain fit. AI cannot replace a human in terms of being able to judge that fit. And what I was going to say actually is it's important for candidates. Candidates come to us and say, well, I want to work for a really forward-thinking, dynamic business, which is really going places. Others will say, well, actually, I'm kind of at a time in my life where I just want a really nice job, which I can go into. I know I'm going to be appreciated for what I'm doing, but I don't want to have a social life with the people I'm working with. And I just want to, and I kind of want to be, 9 to 5, happy to work 3 or 4 days in the office, but I want to work 1 day from home. So you cannot get that level of those level of intricacies, and it is those level of intricacies which sets in our area of recruitment, which sets a great consultant apart from a consultant, because we're having these conversations and can say, right, there's going to be a fantastic match there. So for us, the human intervention, if you like, of a consultant, and that intervention, that conversation with the candidate, and a human conversation with the candidate, and a human conversation with the client when we're taking the brief, is so important. And I cannot see AI replicating that in the area we're in, which is obviously heavily personality based.
Massively. Like, it's one thing I speak about to people an awful lot, is the one thing that I think AI is a good thing, because where it will come in and augment people rather than replace them is that it'll let recruiters focus on being, ultimately what the second part of their job title often is, a consultant, right? And I think the 3 words that come to my mind when I think about it is it's intuition, nuance, and relationship. Those are 3 things I think that AI will never truly be able to get. As you say, it might be able to assess a candidate and say, candidate number 11678 matches these skills with 78% accuracy, and therefore they're good for this job. They haven't got that nuance to understand things like you say, like, what is that person looking for in their life right now? And does this job give them that exactly what they want? AI might get close and it might be able to make recommendations to the consultant to go and look at and consider, but that decision should ultimately still come from a human. And I don't think you ever really find a candidate, at least in my opinion, turning around and saying, oh yeah, AI's got my back. No, they're going to say, David at Tiger has got my back here. I know that he's got my best interests at heart, that he's looking out for me. I don't think you'll ever really be able to say the same about a machine, right?
I couldn't agree more. And I think what we're seeing in terms of the response from candidates and clients is that, well, firstly that on the candidate side, but if we're seeing, if our consultants see a candidate that a CV, it's very clear to us whether a CV, for instance, is being AI generated. That is an immediate.
You know how I know? When people apply for jobs and they're UK based and everything uses Z instead of S, I know that you've gone to the death here. Either not checking spell check properly, or AI has written this for you and you've not said to it, write it in UK English.
You're right on that. I do think that as it gets more sophisticated, that we will have to. That will get sorted out very rapidly.
We'll find another tell. It's okay.
Yeah, but you just can tell it from a mile off. And as the other thing we saw the other day is, and I had a call from a client saying, "You won't believe this," and it happened to me as well. I was interviewing someone, and what the person was doing is, I was asking a question, and they were looking at their screen. They had some AI software running in the back who was answering the questions for them, and they were reading the answers. Okay, maybe not verbatim, but certainly, the answers were being AI generated. But again, candidates got to remember that, trust yourself. People want to hear your personality. They want that's such an important part of it. And you might think, no, that this is helping me, but it's actually really, really not. And I think AI, as you say, AI is a great thing, but used properly. And I think, and it's really important for job seekers to do that, but also for agencies and CEOs and in consultancies to do that as well. It's up to us to sort of set the market on that, really, and set the standards.
It's a topic we can go into for hours as well. I think it's so fascinating. What are you most excited about when it comes to AI? It hasn't got to strictly be applied to recruitment here when I'm asking this question, because obviously it's a very, very broad thing that will touch every area of our lives. Is there any particular use case that you're looking at and thinking, that's the future I'm betting on?
It's a very good question. It's probably a pretty obvious question that I should have a quick answer to, but I don't. I think AI one of the things I say to the team the whole time is, look, what AI is going to improve what we're doing? How is it going to enhance what we're doing? I think in terms of, is there a way that we're okay? Let's use an example. So we will use AI on the database. If we'll pick up. We will just run it through we'll run it across every CV. So it will generate a write up for that candidate, which we can have on the system as a catch-all. And what that does is it then forms the basis for what a consultant can then amend and edit for their write-up on that candidate's profile. So it's what it's not is something that we will have, particularly given the discussion we're having. It'll never replace that consultant to be able to do that. But what it does, it speeds up the ability for a consultant to get that particular piece of their job done quickly. So I think for me, if AI can help us speed up certain processes, even by very, very small margins, when you add all of those small margins up together, then it does become something quite meaningful. So the other thing, another piece where we've seen it work really well, and it does excite me, it is where the meeting transcriptions using AI, and those are becoming more sophisticated, particularly the ones that then are able to get the salient points of that meeting down and the follow-ups. And I think that's also quite good from a sort of a training and from a training piece as well, particularly around junior consultants. And also, if you've got that running back as a training tool, they're doing calls rather than having someone sitting next to them, a manager, which, let's face it, we've all had it, can be quite intimidating. To suddenly have that running in the back, and then the manager can check those notes. I quite like that, actually. So those are the types of things. It's about finding areas which can support the business. One of the things, and I'm sure every managers, CEOs will say the same thing as me. The number of emails we're getting right now with people pushing new and through LinkedIn and bits and pieces pushing new AI technology is just gone bananas.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah,
it is. And but the problem is, some of it is fantastic stuff, but it's about this is the thing I'm fascinated. How can you tell the difference quickly between what's a good AI product and a bad AI product? And this must be really frustrating, when you're in the sort of that industry, in that sort of software industry, because how can because ultimately what then happens is people sort of delete everything. But that's not what I do, because I don't want to ever miss. I never want to miss that. I have a massive FOMO on missing out on something that's really good and really good for the business. Right. But it's about how you can disseminate between good AI and bad AI quickly.
It's always a hard one. The one that I've looked at for the longest time on this side is, does it feel like it's a wraparound for something that you could achieve in ChatGPT? So think about when AI first came around, there was a lot of stuff around it, writing blogs for you, for example. You could go into ChatGPT and say, I am a recruitment agency who services the PHP market in the development world. Please write me a blog talking about the differences between Laravel 5 and Laravel 6 or something like that. And it would write you a blog on it, and you'd slap that on your website and be like, yeah, cool. But the thing is, you'd see so many tools come around that would charge you like £100 a month for the privilege of doing that for you, when you could basically go and do it yourself for free entirely inside of ChatGPT. So when I'm looking at AI tools these days, I'm always looking at things that are like, are they integrated in some way into my data set? And can they do things with that data that would take me days to do at this point? Is there some real innovation that it can do for me? And there's always new things popping up. For example, one that's been around for a while now has been like AI salespeople. They'll do the cold calling for you. They'll arrange meetings for you. There was a case yesterday where one of the more high-profile companies in the space called 11X, some info came out about them that they've been falsely reporting their revenue. They've raised like 70 million or something crazy, and they'd reported, we're at 14 million a year in revenue. Turns out they were only at 3, and they had a lot of churn issues where customers were using it for 3 months, seeing it burn through all of their data and sour a lot of relationships, and then have nothing left to work with. So there's a lot of promised land, like you say, at the minute, and it takes an awful lot, I think, to speak to a lot of other people, those who've got a lot of know, I think, in the AI sector especially, and go, is this actually legit? Because it's really hard behind all the marketing bluster to know that without using it yourself. And by that point, you can be contractually locked in. You can be trying out 10 different bits of tech. It's an absolute nightmare. And it's one of those markets, I think, that the more we see innovation happen in that space, the more you'll see real winners start to emerge. But it's going to be messy for a couple of years whilst we get through that first phase. But I think all disruptions like that, look at like when blockchain was around, for example, right?
Yeah.
Everything was saying, oh, it uses blockchain. It's like, yeah, what does that actually mean though? Is there any real value in this? And I think ultimately blockchain's turned out to be, I don't want to say a failure, but it's definitely fading into the background, right? I think AI will largely be the same way. You'll get a lot of cowboys there, I say early on, that don't really do an awful lot with AI, but will use the term because it's good marketing. And it'll be a few years until you really see that settle down and you see the true diamonds emerge from the craziness.
Yeah, interesting.
That's my perspective anyway. I'm not the guest, but here I am being a guest to
Yeah,
you asking me a
no,
question a little bit.
Terry, all the most on this stuff, so it's interesting for me to hear your thoughts on it.
I had a good chat because we had obviously dinner at the end of January, and I had a good chat with Elliot Dell a few weeks ago down in London about all this stuff as well, and it was really interesting. He does a lot of personal coaching, and he was asking, how can we do things using AI with that? Can we offer like a free service to those that can't afford like coaching for a one-to-one relationship to get some form of way of getting started? And I was like, it's a really good idea. So there will be really cool things that come out of it as long as they are solution first and not AI first. That's the big difference I think that will make an impact in the market.
Yeah. Look, and I think as CEOs of recruitment, you've got to be really careful because you can start spending out, all these things you're paying for and all the software, it really amounts up. And so you've got to be really, really careful and be really disciplined about what you go for, what you don't go for. It could even be that you just say, right, around over and above the sort of the core database system we use in the advertising and LinkedIn and other bits and pieces we do, we're going to look at, let's say, two AI pieces of, two AI providers or two AI driven bits and pieces that can actually enhance what we're doing a year. And we'll run 2 trials and that's it, and be really disciplined on that. I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but it's not a bad call because what I can see is CEOs of things saying, okay, this sounds fantastic, this sounds brilliant, this sounds brilliant. Suddenly sort of signing up to 10 products and saying, oh, hold on a second, my cost per consultant per month has gone up by £1,000 or 1,500 quid. Oh God, where's all my profit gone? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's easily done, isn't it? So you've got to be very.
It's the fear of FOMO, like you say, too. Do I miss out on a great product that will just get in there for a way ahead of me? Like it feels like I can't miss out on that potential benefit. It is a really hard time to be a buyer, I think, when there's so much AI out there. So I do sympathise with a lot of people. Awesome. Well, again, another topic we go on to for hours at this point. I'll do an episode 2 at some point, maybe focus more around AI and have a big dig on it into like a year's time when we see how the market's moved on. We'll see. But as we start to come towards an end on this front as well, a couple more questions for you if you don't mind, then we'll start to close things out. Obviously, a very experienced person. Where do you go to get your inspiration, your ideas from? Or any kind of people on LinkedIn or podcasts or books that you read that you absolutely adore and always recommend?
Look, I try and read as much as possible. I used to read a lot of rubbish, and I try and read, the things that I'm really interested in. And I think for me, anything that kind of gives you a sort of wider context of what's going on around in the world, and just how lucky we are to be in a sort of situation where, you can make a difference, you can come up with ideas, you can try things, they can fail, and you can try again, and so on. So I try and read as much as possible. On the AI stuff, like Mo Gawdat's book. I said I know nothing about AI, so I read Mo Gawdat's book. I can't even remember the title now, but that was actually really enlightening, and at least gave me a sort of a really good starter's view. So that's one. I think it'll be obvious which one of his books that is. So that's important. I think for me, I'm a big thinker. Like I love running. I'm a sort of bit of an exercise freak, but not in a sort of a gym way. I'm much more. I've always been ever since at day dot. I've always been an endurance runner. So for me, and when I run, I never listen to music. So I always think. So I like to and my I guess my inspiration. I watch a lot of sport and sport in terms of the decisions people make under pressure. Big football managers, in terms of when it comes to management, when they get rid of high-profile players, why did they do that? How have they done that? How have they gone about doing that? Find that really interesting. Individual sports people. I find there's a massive correlation between sport and business. I really do. Elite sport and being as high, being the optimal performance you can put into running a business, etc. There's a massive correlation. So sport and finding some sort of icons you really like. And going back to the endurance thing, I'm always fascinated with people who just keep on going, and just when the going gets tough, then they get better and better and better. And I think that's it's about watching people overcome challenges and hurdles, and that's where I get inspiration. People also, it could, we've all got family and friends who probably you've not been very well and things have happened, etc., etc. And it's about using that as well and using that as a strength. So it's just trying to find as many different things to get that strength into yourself, because I think that's really important as a CEO, but not just as a CEO. I think it's really important for every individual. Retain that positivity. You keep that enthusiasm, keep that zest for life. And I think anything everyone has different ways and different places to find it, but you've just got to find some way of finding it for yourself, and your life will be far more enriching as a result.
Awesome. Really, really good answer to that as well. Fantastic. Thank you. Final question I'll ask you then. What's the most valuable thing that you've learned over the last year? And it can't be about AI from Mo. I'm sorry. We can edit out the silence, don't worry.
Yeah, no. Because there are so many different things. I think you can. I think changing up. I think the interesting thing where I am now is that in the UK and London, I'm an early starter. I'd be in the office. I'm up early. I'm in the office by 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm flat out. And I'm an early bird. Now I'm here in Dubai. Suddenly I'm having to look and go, hold on, I've got to get into, as I said to you before, I've got to get into a completely different pattern of work here. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if this isn't a year thing, and this is obviously a very, very recent thing, but it is something that I've been thinking about this week. Is actually, hold on, I've got to adapt to this. Now, it's not so much the move that I'm adapting to, because I've been over to Dubai many, many times, but that's actually adapting your routine is actually quite a big thing. And so that's the thing I've been thinking about this week is, number one, changing a routine for someone like me who likes a routine is a really big thing. But number two, well, actually, I kind of liking this, I've been in the last couple of days, I kind of like the routine I've been in the last couple of days, and it is a very different routine. So I think that's the thing I guess I'm learning right now is that, you might be very used to doing something for 20 odd years, but you can always adapt and you can always change things up, even though do you see what I mean?
It feels uncomfortable to do, but it's almost like the right thing to do, and you can see what it can lead to.
Absolutely. And that's a really exciting thing.
Awesome. Well, I hope it all goes well up there as well. I'm sure we'll talk at some point between now and the far off future. Clearly no more dinners now you're in Dubai. I can't exactly afford to fly you over, I'm afraid, but I'm sure at some point we'll catch up. Hope it goes really well out there. Any final shout outs you want to do? And if people have any questions, where could they get in touch with you?
So get in touch with me. Best way is probably by email, david.morel at tiger-recruitment.co.uk. And I will always come back as well. So, and I believe in coming back quite quickly. So feel free to shout out. And look, and I'm always very supportive of new people setting up in the industry, and always happy to have a coffee or in Dubai, jump on a call and give as much advice as I can. So do feel free to reach out. Very happy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, David. That was a really, really insightful hour, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Derry. Take care. Cheers, then. Bye-bye.